That would be a little.
As a fortunate of me leaving my mouse at school. Oh, wait, must I move?
All right. Oh, wait, practice mode. Okay, there we go. So now people can join. All right.
Firing up my laptop.
That's fine. Oh, whoa, lots of participants. Holy cow. That's great.
How much is the participants?
So far 17, but they're like joining. Hello, everyone.
I need room.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll start in a few minutes. Meanwhile, feel free to say hi, tell us where you're from. There's a chat and there's also Q&A. I'll explain that a little bit, but you can use the chat. You should be able to. You can say hi right here. Excellent. I'm super excited. So many people are joining.
I'm not sure I have internet.
What?
The Wi-Fi isn't really working. Wait, okay, it's working. Just quite slow.
Excellent. I'm just going to arrange one or two more things, and we'll start in a few minutes. Give a chance for some more people to show up as well. It's going to be fantastic. Let me see if I can actually. Oh, amazing. People from all over. This is great. Let's do this. Amazing. People from all over. This is super fantastic. Actually, I just heard you come in. Yeah?
Yeah, should I join with my audio and video?
No, you can try to mute yourself, I'd say.
Yeah, I muted.
Ooh, already lots of questions. So today's, so here we go. I will answer live. So I'll already tell people. Isaac asked, today's lesson will be recorded. Can we access it later? The answer is yes. Today's session will be recorded. All these sessions are going to be recorded, and you'll be able to get to it through the course dashboard. I forget exactly what it's called, but that's the basic idea. Absolutely. I'm going to see exactly how we can make it available, but that absolutely. How can you get into the Pi app? Ari Plosker asks. So I'm going to give you a little bit of instruction on that. You might be able to do it now when we're together, when we start up, and you might have to wait just a little bit as well to sort of figure that out. But I will tell all, or at least that's the plan. Give me another moment. I just want to set one more thing up so maybe you can follow more easily. Give me a second here. I'll just start up a new notebook here. Do that. Okay, and people are still joining as well, which is fantastic. So, yeah, lots of people. Excellent. All right, we'll call this non-programmers.
Like here. Do you want me to take in answers?
So no, I think for now, no. So I actually answered stuff already, and I guess I have to click on done. Yeah. I get it. Okay.
And then I can see.
I see, and then it's answered. Got it. Okay, non-programmers. We'll call this March 20th. Oh, lots of 20s. And then that will give me a file. All right, people are still coming in. I'm just saying one more thing, and then we will actually start. Good, so I can do this. Creating, no, just push to this. I will explain all in just a moment. I just want to make it as easy as possible for people to find what I'm working on. There we go with that. Excellent. Now push this to GitHub and all will be good. Well, most things will be good. There are a few issues here and there in the world today, you might have heard. Okay, that is being pushed. Good. All right, and we are set there. So now, if we go to GitHub, perfect. Okay. All right, folks. People are still coming in, which is super fantastic. But I'm going to introduce what?
You have a few questions.
A few more questions. Excellent. Oh, more open questions. Whoa. All right. I am going to. You can only see me, so you can make as much noise and dance as much as you can, right? Well, Catherine, that's what they want you to think, but we see you dancing. No, actually, the way it works is I can sort of ask you, I can give you permission to speak, and then you can speak. But typically it's going to be like one way. I actually did a bit of research on this, and that's the difference between a meeting and a webinar. So a meeting is like everyone can talk and nothing gets done, and a webinar is only one person talks and lots gets done. Well, at least that's how I'm going to define it for now. So yeah, so you can dance around, and that is fantastic. Okay. There's also, there's a chat where people are talking. Okay, if the CMD doesn't reprise, Pip, I will help you with that hopefully in a minute. Got to point with code and help or something, what do you with the point? I will help with that as well. All right, let me say hello to everyone who's now coming in and here already and welcome you and explain what's going on. You, I guess, know this. I'm Reuven. I am running this course, and the plan is to run this for a whole bunch of weeks. How long? We'll see. It should be fun. It should be exciting. And this is, as the name I don't even think implies, it's called Python for Non-Programmers. And the idea is, let's get you started slowly but surely, little by little by little, moving ahead with programming. Just to give you some background on who I am, what I do. So I've been programming for a long time, like a very long time, it would seem at this point. I graduated from university in 1992 with a computer science degree, and I've been a programmer ever since. Doing various projects. I've been self-employed since 1995, doing various consulting projects. And for about 10 years, I've been teaching Python programming to companies all around the world. So in the last year, before people stopped traveling, you remember what traveling was? Before that stopped, I was in the US and Europe and the UK and India and China, and occasionally saw my family too, teaching Python to various companies. And I've been using Python since about 1992 or so. So I think I have a fun job. I get to go teach people, help them improve their careers, help them improve their companies, learn lots of stuff. And I can assure you that I learn lots of stuff along the way too, thanks to people's questions. So this course is basically all about the very, very basics of programming using Python. Meaning we're going to start with like the very basic, like what is a programming language? What is this Python thing? Why is everyone talking about it? What can we do with it? And then we're going to do some basic input, output. And over the next few weeks, then we will learn some basic data structures. What are data structures? How are they different from one another? Using them a lot. We'll get to functions, some modules. And I think that's probably where we will end up stopping. Normally, this is a course that I teach at like Fortune 100, 500 companies around the world. And it takes 4 8-hour days. And by the end of those 4 8-hour days, people's, as I like to say, like their brains are sort of running out of their ears, right? It's a lot of information. It's a lot to do. It's exciting and fun, but it's also a lot. By breaking it up over many weeks, hopefully it'll give you a chance to sort of regroup, think, participate, catch up if you weren't able to participate here. We'll have a forum that you were invited to that you can ask questions there. I'll really try to answer questions. Hopefully people can answer each other's questions as well. And we will take it as it comes. I mean, I also, just so you know, like, I mean, right now I'm obviously not going to any companies. I, like many people around the world, am currently sort of, self-isolating at home. I encourage you to do that. I do teach online courses as well. I have a whole lot of recorded courses that I do for pay. And I might be opening some new ones in the coming weeks. I write a newsletter that you guys will all be added to at some point in the next few days, probably, called Better Developers, which has about 16,000 Python developers around the world who receive it, get updates and information about Python programming. And so I am, like all of us, adjusting to this new reality that's going to happen for a while to come. But since I've been teaching online for a few years already, I figure I can try to offer some things like this for free, and other things, we'll take it as it comes. Okay, someone, Ashwani asked, are we going to be able to cover all the aspects of Python, the framework like Flask or Django, to build API? No. So basically, just to give you some background, and we'll go more into this later, but Python is used in a huge, huge, huge number of ways nowadays. It is incredibly popular as a programming language, and one of the ways in which it's used most often is in web applications. And you can build everything from scratch if you really want to doing a web app, but you probably don't want to do that. You want to use what other people have used already, and we're going to talk about a lot about that idea of abstraction in this course. And so if you want to build a web app, you'll typically use the work that someone else has done and build on top of that. And two of the popular ways to do that in Python are Django and Flask. And so we're not going to get to talk about those. However, the basic ideas that we learn here do apply to everything. And they'll be able to apply to everything moving forward, whatever you want to do with Python. Okay, so the plan today is to sort of talk a little about programming languages, Python, and give you an introduction to some of the tools we can use to program with Python as well. So let's start off with, like, what is a programming language? What is this thing? So at the very, very base of all of our computers, the things we're using now to assemble around the world, is hardware, right? You've got a chip in there. And people realized about 60, 70 years ago that you could use transistors, you could use electrical circuits to create logic, to basically make decisions. That if you have this coming in and this coming in, you could have something else coming out. And you can build these huge webs of transistors that have then been shrunk down to the point where you now have millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes even billions of these transistors on a chip. And they can make all sorts of decisions. So if you wanted a computer to do something years ago, what you had to do was go build a chip or build transistors and assemble them the right way. The good news is that works really well, it's really fast. The bad news is it is super, super inflexible, right? You don't want to be remaking new chips for every single application you want to write. So someone had the brilliant idea, or many people probably had the brilliant idea, what if we made the chips super generic? And then we allowed, so someone's complaining that the audio is poor. I think that we are experiencing the world overload of Zoom. So I'm afraid, I don't know if it's, it might be you, it might be, I'm sorry to say that. In any event, someone came up with the idea that we can write a generic chip that does a lot of different things, and then basically you can write all sorts of programming languages that are translated into that chip's language. And that's where we are today, and that's where we've been for 50 years, 60 years. The idea is that a person who wants to program a computer can write in whatever language they want, and that language is then translated into the chip's language and can then execute. Now, how do we get from what the person is writing to the chip's language? That means basically we're going to need some sort of translation. And there are two basic methods for translating. One is, as it's running little by little to do translation. That's sort of what happens like if you're at a conference and you're hearing something with simultaneous translation. And the other way to do it is sort of like when you read a book in translation, where it's like all done at once. And these are both perfectly reasonable alternatives. Python is sort of straddling between the two, but it's mostly closer to the first, where it's little by little being translated, what's known as an interpreter. It's not really an interpreter, but it's close to it. And Python's not the only language that work like this. You might have heard of like Java or C# or other such languages. They work in a similar way, not exactly, but very, very similarly, where they have like this intermediate step and so forth. And so the idea is you can write in the language you want to, sort of be closer to what's easier for people, translate it into the chip's language, and then go and run it. Fantastic. And then we have the ability to write all sorts of interesting things in something that's easier for us. So why Python? Like, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of programming languages out there. What's the deal with Python? So I'll tell you, as I mentioned earlier, I started using Python in like 1992 or so. And at that time, there were a whole lot of, maybe a handful of languages that were kind of similar in style. And they all had the sense of, let's make programming easy for people. And okay, so the program won't execute so quickly. Who cares? Not everything needs to run at the speed of light. Things could also run at sort of a more slow pace, because who cares if basically the program takes a minute to run or a minute and 10 seconds to run. We do care a lot, though, if it takes a person 10 minutes to write a program or 10 hours to write the program. And so what's going to happen is, you know what, if people are complaining about the audio, let me just check to make sure my audio is using the right microphone. Yeah, it is, sorry. All right, just want to double check that. So I think we're like just dealing with internet meltdown here. Sorry, folks. So basically, the idea is that, as I like to say, Python is good for a time in which computers are cheap and people are expensive. We don't care so much about how fast the program runs. We care how quickly people can write and maintain their code. And so what happened over the last 25, 30 years is that this became truer and truer. And Python, which was, you know, a cute language, some people using it, has become this powerhouse, super ridiculously popular language. Python is now the #1 language in data science and machine learning. It's very popular in analyzing web stuff. It's popular for powering web applications. It's being used to teach people programming around the world. And the reason is basically that it's super easy to learn relative to other programming languages, but it doesn't have any limits. There are languages, like some of you might have heard of Scratch, which is the sort of graphical language for kids. Scratch is great. It's very easy to get into, but you can't do serious programming in Scratch. It sort of limits you. It's what's known as having maybe a low floor, but also a low ceiling. And Python, by contrast, is sort of low floor and high ceiling. You can do, and many professional programmers do, real, true programming in Python day to day. and it's pretty great. So like, I mean, my clients include companies like Apple and Intel and Cisco and HP and so on and so forth. So basically, Python is used by real programmers every day, but it's still easy to get into. And so you now have a huge number of kids also, some middle school, a lot of high school, huge number of university students learning Python as their first programming language. Now, so if programming is like so great, why doesn't everyone do it? Well, they can, first of all. And second of all, it's hard. All right, I'm not going to like sugarcoat this. I think everyone can learn to program, but it's like learning a foreign language. Moreover, when you learn a foreign language, you have to practice it a lot in order to get good at it. And you already know when you learn a foreign language, what are nouns, what are verbs, what are adjectives and so forth. How do you put together a sentence? By contrast, right, when you're learning a programming language, when you're learning programming for the first time, you're learning the words themselves, and you're learning what is a data, what is functions, what's a function, how do I run these things? You're learning the syntax and the concepts at the same time. And that can be really tough and very difficult. So what my hope is to give you in this course is like a gentle introduction to these ideas and the syntax, and also give you some practice so you can then sort of have some senses of how to move along in all these things. All right. I see a few questions here. One question, Python versus CSS, someone asked. So CSS is used for displaying stuff in the web. If you have a web page, CSS describes what color, what size, what placement. And Python really has nothing to do with that. CSS, I would even argue, is not really a programming language. It's like a markup language, a description language. And oh my God, so hard to use as well. And people who actually know what they're doing with CSS really, really impress me. I definitely don't. I can like move things, make them a little bigger, a little smaller, but not much more than that. Okay, so great. So Python is popular. Python is easy to learn. How do we, so what's Java? So Java is just another programming language. Its advantage is that it's not only very popular, but it runs really, really, really fast. But learning Java is hard, and it's a lot of new concepts. And so it takes a while to sort of be able to jump into it. And even when you do, it's just incredibly complex. I teach a lot of people Python, teach Python to a lot of people who've previously learned Java. And at first they're like, yeah, another programming language. And then they see how little you have to do, how little you have to write in Python to actually get it to work and to get amazing things done. I'll show them things in like 2 or 3 lines of Python that would take, say, 50 lines in Java to do. And so Python is very terse, but it's also very powerful, in part because it's what's considered like a higher level language, that it sort of is slower in execution because it makes things easier for the human programming it. And so by making it easier for the human, that's great. That's great for us. Also, I would argue that nowadays it's very easy to learn to program, or relatively easy, but maintaining software, that's really hard. And so making the code as maintainable as possible, as readable as possible, is also very important. So let's assume we want to use Python. Now what? Like, what do I do? So I sent out, I think I sent email, I put in the forum, I know I put in the forum there, how to install Python. And so you install the language on your computer, and you need it to be there in order to run it. But then you also need a way to write the Python code in order for it to like run. So what I'm going to be using in this course is something known as the Jupyter Notebook. It is a fantastic, fantastic tool for writing Python code. It's not really used for writing, say, production code, although it's used by a lot of data scientists. And the reason is it's meant for like viewing your code, experimenting with it, letting other people see it. It's not really meant for writing things that then you can run on your computer as a standalone program. But Jupyter is fantastic for pedagogical purposes. I've been using it for many years, and it allows me to share with you exactly what I'm working on and what I'm writing. Oh, that reminds me, I just need to put something in place. I totally forgot about it. There we go, get auto push. There we go, fantastic. So I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a few moments, and when I share my screen, you'll see what Jupyter looks like. If you want to install Jupyter on your computer, I put some instructions in the forum. Someone, Roni, and pardon me if I'm like butchering people's names, but Roni says that CMD doesn't recognize pip. Is there a solution? There are solutions. What I'm going to ask is we put that in the forum, and then you can cut and paste or copy and paste your error messages, and I can try to solve them for you there. I will tell you that as a general rule, Python as an open source language works generally better on Unix and on the Mac than it does on Windows, just because of like historical reasons. Nowadays, it's easier and easier to install these things on Windows, but it's still not quite as easy. And so if I can help people to sort of deal with that in the forum, then we can see what we can do. And I assure you, it is possible. It's just sort of annoying. So I also put in the forum, or maybe it was in the email, I can't remember now, that if you can't get Jupyter to run on your computer, that's fine. You can go to try.jupyter.org, and that lets you run Jupyter sort of in your browser, not having to set anything up. The other thing is, I'm going to start using Jupyter here. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put this together with a recording of this video on my course page, and I'm also going to make it sort of available live on GitHub. So, oh, here's a question. Syntax you're saying in other languages like learning verbs, nouns, and programming is an art, really tends to learn. Are you going to teach us programming as an art or just the Python syntax? I'm hoping to get you started. So imagine you want to travel to a foreign country and you want to learn the language. If you really want to learn, you're going to have to spend a few years doing it. That's just sort of the way it is. But if you want to learn enough to get around, like ask where the train station is and buy a loaf of bread and find the bathroom, you can do that in a few lessons. We're going to get to the point like where you can do that, where you sort of you'll know enough to be dangerous, as it were, in Python, but you'll also have the basics that real programmers need to know and need to learn in order to go on and learn more from there. And I hope along the way that I'll be able to demonstrate a lot of these ideas of computer science and give you a sense of where to go further even after this course. Oh, you have Windows. Can you use PyCharm? Absolutely. PyCharm is free. There's two versions. There's CE, the Community Edition, which is totally free. And there's the Professional Edition, which is great if you want to give money to a nice company, but not necessary whatsoever in general or for this course. So you don't need to worry about that in the slides. Oh, do I recommend using Jupyter or downloading the program? So I would recommend for medium to long term, you have to download Python. And then do you want to use Jupyter or do you want to use an editor like PyCharm? That is a matter of taste. It's a matter of what you're doing. I'm going to be using Jupyter for everything we do in the class here. But if you want to install PyCharm to have standalone Python programs, also good. And I'll help you with that in the forum as well. All right. Oh, and VS Code is also very popular. That's true. That's true. Thank you, Catherine. You're right. VS Code. Microsoft has done a dramatic shift in the last few years. They're now super into open source software, and VS Code is very impressive. Oh, will you be able to complete weekly Python exercise after this course? Probably not. You might need some more intro, like basic stuff to get through that. But I appreciate the interest. All right, let me fire up screen sharing on Jupyter, and I'll show you what it's doing and how it's doing. Oh, there's another. Oh, there are more questions. How do I download Jupyter? The instructions are in the forum, and I'll try to help you there with that. It's a little bit complicated, not terrible, but a little bit. All right, let's share the screen here. Voomp. And now you should see that. And this is what Jupyter looks like. This is what a Jupyter notebook looks like. In fact, when you run Jupyter on your computer, it gives you something that looks like this. This will show you all the files in the current directory. Oh, raised hand. Oh, how does that work? I've never used that before. Chat. Hold on. Where does raised hand go? I don't know. Tell you what, it's easier if you put it in the chat or as a Q&A, and then I can sort of figure out what's going on. Oh, Ari Plosko is there. How do I? Oh no, don't raise your hand. Just if you can, just put it in the chat, I guess. I'm still figuring out how to do this webinar stuff on Zoom as well. Okay, I see that you raised your hand. Anyway, when you start Jupyter, you'll get to this page. And again, I'll explain this in the forum, but you can go here to Python 3 and open up a new notebook. Whoop, come on. And this is what it looks like. This is like a new Jupyter notebook. Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing, if you want to follow along, I've actually made it so that you can sort of follow along at home. I'm just going to say Python 4. I'm going to paste this and put this into the chat. Here, you can follow my Jupyter notebook in read-only format here. Now, it will take about a minute or so for it to update. And if you go there, let me just actually go there so you can take a look. This is a site called GitHub. It's used very popularly for programmers to exchange information. And you'll see here, there's like a copy of my directory. And if you click here on the non-programmers, March 20th, IPYNB. Now, there's nothing to see yet. I haven't written anything here. So it'll bring up an empty thing as it's empty. If you refresh it, then you'll get it'll be delayed by about a minute or two, but you'll see what I'm typing into as well. And that will be available and you'll be able to look at that after the class is done as well. Okay, so now that I'm talking to Python, what do I say, right? Like, what do you say the first time you meet a programming language? All right, probably not much. I'm sure there's a good joke to be said there, but I don't know what it would be. So I now am in Jupyter and I can give any Python command I want. So like the traditional thing to do in a programming language when you first start off is have it print hello world. By the way, trivia, that tradition was started in the late 60s, early 70s by the people who wrote the C programming language and wrote the book about it. And after they put in their book, we should print out hello world, now everyone does that. So here I'm gonna do that. Print hello world. And you can already see what a powerful programming language we are dealing with, that it can print this sort of text on the screen. Firefox versus Chrome does not matter. Jupyter could not care less. However, old versions of Internet Explorer, bad. I mean, bad in general and bad for Jupyter. So what did I do here? What did I do? Like, I mean, obviously I asked the computer to print something and it's then printing something. But what I really did was I executed a function. I ran a function. I used a verb. And that verb here is print. And print is a super popular common function we're going to use in our program to print something on the screen. Now, what can it print? In this case, I'm telling it to print some text. And we'll talk more later in the course about what we're dealing with text. But text inside of either double quotes or single quotes is called a string. Why is it called a string? Because it's like a string of pearls or a string of other like sort of valuable things. A string of popcorn, I don't know what it would be, but like many, many things on a string. So if someone talks about a string in programming, they don't mean like, an actual string, they mean a bunch of text. And the way that you say you have a bunch of text is you put in quotes. Python could not care less whether you use single quotes or double quotes, just use the same thing on both sides. And you can then you can put whatever text you want inside of there. So I say print hello world, and then after that, I press Shift plus Enter to execute the cell. Notice, I have here a hash mark. The hash mark tells Python, this is everything from the hash mark to the end of the line is a comment, meaning ignore it. So I can either have a comment up here. This is a comment. And this is also a comment here after. Hash marks start comments. That is for people, the programming language could not care about it at all. And I'm going to put lots of comments in my Jupyter notebook so that you, if you want to review it later on, you'll be able to see it, you'll be able to work with it as well. And I can go back and edit things, right? If I'm super excited, I can put lots of exclamation points there. Shift Enter, it executes again. So this is, believe it or not, an actual program, right? It might be a really silly one. It might be a really small one. It might be like not something that you can actually go public on the stock market with, although that's maybe nowadays not the best idea anyway. But this is actually executing something. Python sees this code, does that translation that I described earlier into machine code, and it runs on the chip of your computer. The thing is, where is this running? Is it really running in your browser? No, that is the beauty of Jupyter. It's an illusion. Jupyter is built out of two parts. It's built out of the browser part that lets you run Python, and it's built out of the actual, what we call a server part that the browser part is just like, looks like it's running Python. The server is actually where it's running Python. And this is how you can, for example, connect to try.jupyter.org and use their Jupyter notebook, because there, you can see, it's not running on your computer. So Jupyter gives you this great illusion, and it's really useful in that way. So if you have Jupyter run, so what is Jupyter really used for? So why is an old version of Internet Explorer bad? Because its JavaScript is terrible, and Jupyter depends on all sorts of like really sophisticated JavaScript. And what is Jupyter really used for? I would say it's used a ton by data scientists and machine learning specialists who want to experiment, try. They put their data and their analysis in the same page, and then at their company or in their research group, they can have a whole library of these Jupyter notebook pages around. It's also used for experimentation. I use it day by day for like, playing around with things, experimenting on things, trying things. Jupyter has gotten super popular in the last few years. A year or two ago, I saw the number that there are more than 1 million Jupyter notebook pages available open to the public online. And imagine how many private ones there are. So really, like, Jupyter has become a huge standard, not just in Python, but it's used in other languages as well. But as you can tell, like from the way that they spell it, with a PY in the middle, Jupyter is like primarily Python. I actually just heard a few days ago that really it's like this from the Julia language and Python. I don't know what the T would be for, and the R language as well. So it's like for data scientists. But whether that's true, I'm not really sure. Okay, so we can print hello world. What else can we do? Well, let's assume that I want to print, hello to my name. So I could say, print hello Reuven. Maybe I'll just, print hello, print Reuven. That's also good. But it's kind of boring and kind of annoying to always have to say exactly what you want to print. So basically, it would be nice if I could stick that information somewhere else. If I could sort of put it into a variable. Now, if you've done any sort of math, you know what variables are. Sort of. Variables in programming are a little different from variables in math. Variables in programming are sort of like pronouns in a language. They allow me to say, this data, I'm going to refer to it by a different name. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to now create a new variable. So to create a new variable, assign a value to it. I'll show you what that means. Say name equals Reuven. What have I done here? I have taken this text here, Reuven, the text string, and I've said, you know what? I want you to store it inside of the name variable. So anytime I refer to name, really what Python's going to do is say, oh, name, I get it. You really are referring to this. How do you add a new cell or row? When you do shift enter, so shift plus enter executes and creates a new one. But you can also, if you go up to the top, here, view toolbar. I usually get rid of the toolbar. There is a way to add a new one. I forget exactly what it is. I think if you just do a run here. Oh, you just cell add. There is one to do. So somewhere in here, somewhere there you can add new cells. I didn't want to get into like all the mechanics of Jupyter, but there is a way to do it without executing. I just don't remember what it is. Sorry. We'll try to figure that out later. All right, so you can put anything you want in here, and then you can say here, print name. Now notice what I'm doing here. I'm running the print function, meaning I want to print something on the screen. And what Jupyter or what Python's going to do is say, wait, you want to print something. What do you want to print? You want to print name. Hold on a moment. Name is not a value. Name is, again, a pronoun. It's a variable. It refers to a value. So first, Python's going to replace that variable with the value it refers to. It's going to say print, well, as a text. And then it'll print it out. Oh, plus. Oh, very good, very good. If people want to raise their hands, it's sort of okay, but it's easier for me if you just put it in the chat or the Q&A, and then I can follow it more easily. I mean, I guess I can try at some point to like stop for questions, but that's a little easier. So basically, you can assign any value you want to a variable. Now here, I create a new variable by assigning a value to it. Now notice also, how do I assign? I use the equal sign. Equal sign in programming is not the same as equal sign in math. In math, I can say like 2 plus 2 equals 4. And the equal sign here basically means I am stating, or I believe, that the stuff on the left is the same as the stuff on the right. That is not what's happening in programming. In programming, this equal sign does not mean I believe that these things are equivalent. Rather, it means take the thing on the right and stick it into the thing on the left. And so here, when I said name equals Reuven, Python took this string, this text Reuven, and stuck it into the variable name. And then it said, wait, I don't have a variable name yet, so it created it. So if I want to, I can say now name equals someone else. And now if I say print name, it'll say print someone else. And if I say name equals whatever you want, print name, it could be that. Notice, the first time I assigned to name, it created the variable and put the value in there. The second and subsequent times I did it, well, it didn't create a new variable. It just added the what was I going to say? The new value there instead. Oh, the GitHub link here. I'll just I'll put it here into the. I put it in the chat before. I'll paste it again. I have it there. So yeah, there we go. There we go. All right, so you can find it. So Tiana is asking, having difficulty downloading the Python program because you download the 2.0 version first. Don't download and install Python 2. Officially speaking, Python 2 was declared old and dead as of January 1st of this year. Nowadays, people are supposed to be using Python 3. If you have Python 2 on your computer, and you can remove it, like Macs come with it, so don't remove it, right? But if you can remove it, then you should, and you should stick with Python 3. The latest version is 3.8. I'm actually using 3.7, which is good enough for our purposes. And you can, in theory, have both 2 and 3 on the same computer at once, but I would not recommend it as a general rule. Okay, so you can put whatever value you want into a variable and then print it out, and that's pretty great. Why don't you see my screen I don't know, come over to my house. No, I'm sharing the screen now, so you should be able to see it. Maybe it just takes a little while on your internet connection. So, okay, so I was able to put that value in there. I was able to print it out. So far, so good. What else can I put into a variable? Well, I could put lots of different values. I could put like a string like this, and I can even put numbers in there. Let's say I say x equals 100, and say print x. Pretty snazzy. But what if I want to do this? What if I want to say here, like, print, well, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, What if I do this? What if I say x equals 100 and y, oh, the difference between single quotes and double quotes. Okay, I will give you my sarcastic answer, and then I'll give you the real answer. The sarcastic answer is that double quotes use more electricity. The real answer is that actually in Python specifically as a language, it does not matter. You can use either. You can choose single quotes, you can choose double quotes, and there's no difference. You just need to make sure they match up on both sides. Many programming languages actually do care which you use. There are differences between them. Yeah. Oh, and Yoshua says here that Python 3.8 works well in Windows 10. I will tell you, in theory, I've never tried this because I'm not a Windows person, but apparently the Windows Store now has Python. And so if you know how to use that, I don't have just heard the term, you can apparently install Python on your computer pretty easily. I've heard good things about it. So what if I say here x equals 100 and y equals 200? And now what if I say here print x plus y? Well, guess what? Python knows how to do some math. So when I execute this, once again, I do shift plus enter to execute the cell. And then what's Python going to do? It's going to read this and say, oh, I'm going to put 100 into the x variable. Oh, I'm going to put 200 into the y variable. And then I'm going to take these two, x plus y, I'm going to add them together. And it knows how to add numbers together. What do we get back? Big surprise, 300. And then that is handed to print, and print prints it out, and we can see that. Right? So I can even say like print, x plus y, and it works just fine. Now, okay, so Yaroslav says something useful and interesting. Jupyter is special. Jupyter knows that you want to do things interactively, that you want to sort of be doing these experiments and playing with things. And so Jupyter gives you like an extra sort of special piece of functionality that does not normally exist in Python, which is to say, if you just put an expression, if you put something that gives you a value, in the last line of the cell, you'll get the value back. So because this is the final line of the cell, I don't need to say print, I can just see that. It's a little different than printing it out, but for our purposes, it's no different. This is great because I can say, hey, what's the value of x? Oh, not s, x. What's the value of y? I can just like check it. I don't need to say print for all these different things, which is kind of convenient. But if I say like x, y, I'm only going to get back 200 because, expression by itself, not printed, not last line, ignored. But this is an expression by itself. On the last line, we get its value. So that is important to sort of figure it out. And it's like makes life really easy. Now you saw before, I asked what the value of the variable s is. And I asked Python, what's s? It says, oh, hold on a second. The name s is not defined. Meaning basically that, by the way, I guess people are seeing my screen. Okay, right, got it. So basically, if you did not define a variable, if you haven't assigned to it yet, then it doesn't exist. Then Python doesn't know about it. So here I'm saying, hey, what's the value of s? It says, I don't know any s. And so it gives you an error. Errors, I know it sounds crazy, but errors are your friends. And error messages are your friends. They tell you what's going wrong. And so it's important as sort of you learn to program to read the error messages, not just click on OK, and not to ignore them, to sort of see what they're trying to tell you, because they are trying to tell you something important and useful and interesting. Okay, so now we've got all this. So we've seen how we can assign to a variable. We've seen how we can print it out. What if I do this? We've seen that I say x equals 100 and y equals 200. I can say x plus y. Fantastic. What if I do something ever so slightly different? X equals 100, y equals 200. Now notice, these are not numbers. These are text. These are strings. What if I say now x plus y? And the answer is that. And this is where things start to get a little tricky, and I'm purposely showing it to you now so you'll realize these are numbers, and Python deals with numbers in one way. These are strings, Python deals with strings in a totally separate way, which makes sense, right? You will want to take one piece of text and a second piece of text and put them together. So we're going to use plus for that. But you'd also want to take one number and another number and add them together. So what happens if I do this? What if I say x equals 100 and y equals the string 200, say x plus y? What's going to happen? Is it going to say 300? Or is it going to say 100, 200? And the answer is neither. I'm going to get an error message. Python says, don't make me guess. I don't know what you want from me. do you want me to like add these as numbers? Do you want me to add these as strings? And in many languages, it will sort of try to guess. It'll figure out what you want to do, not in Python. Python says, I won't guess. I'm going to just do whatever you tell me. And if I can't figure it out, if it's not explicit, I'm going to give up. Right, so quotes are for text, and no quotes are either for numbers or for variables. Right, that's a very important distinction. So if I say here, for example, print, let's do name equals and print name. Now, what is it going to do? It's going to say, let's find the variable name. Let's find what value it has, and I stuck the value Reuven into it, and let's print it out. Terrific. But what if I say instead print name with quotes there? Then it will print name. As far as the programming language is concerned, this line and this line are totally wildly different from one another, because this value is not saying, give me, give me the text name. It's saying, find me the reference. Right? It's sort of like, for those of you who know the old comedy routine of like, who's on first, what's on second. So if you don't know it, you should look it up. But basically, right, who normally is well, I guess it's a pronoun, it's a question word, but like it refers to someone. It is not normally someone's name. And here we have that sort of potential for surprise. So actually, this means I can do some more interesting things. I could say here, for example, name equals Reuven, and I can say print hello plus name. How did that work? Well, it worked because right here I have a string and another string. Two strings together, we just saw, can be added together and give us a new string, one larger string. And so what happens is I run this, I stick Reuven into name. I then go here and I say, let's create a new string. We don't give it a name, but there's a new string there, and hand that new string to print. And sure enough, prints out the whole thing together. There is a chat window. Yeah, there's a chat window that you can go to. Let's see. I don't know, it's called chat. I'll post the GitHub address in there once again, maybe to like blink for you or something. I don't know. All right. So any questions so far with what I've shown you? Questions, comments, and so forth. You can put it in like the question thing. I'm going to answer live. Oh, there are more. Oh, sorry. Are the spaces for aesthetics? It doesn't matter. Oh, great question. Great question. So computers are very stupid, very fast, but very stupid. As someone said to me years ago, and this is like one of the smartest things anyone has ever said, computers don't do what you want them to do. They do what you tell them to do. And so basically, if I say here, print hello, comma, plus name, right? Well, I can do here. So look at this. It's going to smush it together because here it's this string and here it's this string. So inside of a string, the spaces are actually really important. But I just realized that might not be what you're asking. You might be asking about these spaces, like before and after the plus sign. And those are purely aesthetics. And those are purely like trying to make the code a little easier to understand, easier to see. Generally, typically, conventionally in Python, we put a space before and after every operator, like plus or minus or something. So yeah, so I'll typically put it there. But you'll definitely find people who are like, I'll just do x plus y. Oh, I guess it won't let me do that, right? But if I can do 100 plus 200, and they'll do that, I find that hard to read, but there's no accounting for taste. Let me see, other questions. Repos the Git URL, I did that. Okay, fine, and other people did too. Don't see it either. Does see the chat? I don't know what to tell you. There should be a chat somewhere. It says Zoom webinar chat on my thing. So hopefully that. Okay. Any other questions about this so far? Okay. See. No. All right. So now this gets kind of boring also, right? Like for us, oh, I'm Zoomed on Google Webinar. Oh, there is no Google Webinar here. Nothing response. I'm not writing responses to the questions. I'm like there's an answer live here. So I'm just answering them live talking. I'm Zoomed on Google Webinar. Yeah, I don't know where Google Webinar would have to do with this. Your messages don't appear. Oh, there is a chat. Your messages don't appear only once for other participants. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That was my mistake. Thank you, Inbar. Oh, it turns out that I was writing to other panelists, not to everyone. Wow. Thank you so much. So I guess the GitHub thing was there. I will pay more attention to that in the future. I really appreciate that. So, I am here. There we go. Now you should see that, hopefully. Phew. Okay. That was good. Yay. Technology, we love it, sort of. Okay. So this is like fine, I can sort of get the name and I can print something out, but that's also a little boring, right? Like if every time I want to write a program, I'm gonna have to stick this inside and never, like the whole point of a program is like to get input and output from the user. So how can I, instead of hard coding my name in there, get the name from the user? Well, we're gonna use another function, right? Print is a function that displays something on the screen. What I want is a function that gets input from the user. Guess what they call that function? That's right, it's called the input function. And we call the input function giving it a string. And the string is what will be displayed to the user in order to ask them a question. So I'm going to say here, enter your name. And now I run that. And look at what happens. First, Python goes to the first line. And it runs the input function, enter your name. And notice what we have here. We have assignment. In assignment, it's always right side before left side. So right side is going to run the input function, enter your name. And what does that do? It waits around for me. It waits for me to type something. So I'm going to type something, Ruben. And when I press enter, this is going to be the result. This is going to be the value that the function gives us back. And that value will then be stuck into name. And then what do you know? It'll say print hello, Ruben, and works great. Copy and paste, it's like depends on your operating system. Control C, Control V, Command C, Command V. I don't know, I'm sure there are other possibilities, but those are the two big ones. Like it's just a browser, so it works the same as it would normally would in a browser. Why can't you switch like input into? Oh, fantastic question. So Catherine asks, why can't I put it the other way? And the answer is, of course, because. No. Here, let's do this. So what's going to happen here? So when I assign, it's always variable equals value. That's how it's always going to be. And so always we're going to say here, it's always, that's why I always say right side before left side. So if I try to do this, what's going to happen? Well, Python's going to look at the right side of the equal sign and say, oh, well, I see name here. Name refers to a value. Let's get that value. It'll get my name, Reuven. So now this is going to be replaced with the string Reuven. So far, so good. And then it's going to try to assign it to input. And that is not going to go so well. Can't assign to a function call. No can do. Right? Python's trying to stop us here from sort of hurting ourselves. So always it's going to be the value on the right is then assigned to the thing on the left. So if I say, x equals 100, that's fine. I'll say x equals 100 plus 200. I can even say x equals x plus 1, which if you know any mathematics at all, makes no sense, right? How can you say that x is equal to x plus 1? But then you realize, wait, the equal sign here is not referring to equality in math. Rather, it's referring to assignment. It's saying take the value on the right and turn it into the value on the left, put it into the variable on the left. So you will use assignment a ton. Now, I saw in the forum when people introduce themselves, some people have a little bit of experience with other programming languages. And in other programming languages, you often have to declare the variable first. I intend to have a variable x, and x will always contain numbers. You would say something like int x, and then you say x equals 100, and that's fine. Python does not have this idea. It doesn't have this idea because of the way the language is designed. And it means then basically, why would it need this hint? Like, why would a language ever need to know this? Can't you just say x equals 100? Are programming languages so stupid they don't know? And the answer is kind of. The fact that we don't say here before the variable what kind of value it's going to store makes it what's called a dynamic language. And the dynamic language, every variable can contain every type of value. A variable can contain an integer or a floating point number or a string or a list or a dictionary or all sorts of or a module or an object. We're going to talk about all these things in the course. But you can't restrict it straight off. So why do other languages do that? Because it makes the language more efficient. Because then the language knows how much memory to allocate for the data. Oh, you're going to have an integer. We'll allocate this amount. Oh, you're going to have text. We'll allocate much more. You're going to have a dictionary. Well, you're going to allocate even more. And knows how to sort of prepare. So this is part of what makes Python less efficient than other programming languages, because it has to take into account all the possible, all the possibilities there. But it also makes it way, way, way easier for us, right? I can just say x equals 100. I can say x equals ABCD, and fantastic, right? And now I say print of x, and it knows that it's ABCD. And in fact, I can even ask Python. I can say, hey, tell me, what kind of value is in x, type of x? I'll say, oh, that's a string, text. But if I say x equals 100, now I say, what's the type of x? They'll say, oh, that's an integer. And if you show this to someone who's been programming in C for years, they'll nearly fall off their chairs. They'll be like, wait, That's what the language is supposed to protect you from accidentally assigning the wrong kind of value to your variable. To which people who like Python say, that's ridiculous. This is so like, this is a great, as we like to say in computers, that's not a bug, that's a feature. All right, other questions until here? Sorry, I gotta take a little tea break for a moment. Any questions? Oh, the form needs a login credential you don't have. So I emailed everyone. I think like it depends on what, everyone who signed up until about an hour before we started got email with a form invite. If you did not get it and you did not see it in your junk or spam, then let me know and I'll like send me email and I'll be sure to like resend that to you. But I definitely sent everyone. Is X variable the same memory as the new? Oh, what a fantastic question. The answer is no. Oh, now I get to show you my fantastic artistry skills. So you will know why I'm a programmer, not a graphic designer. So watch this. I'm going to draw and then I don't think there's a whiteboard here. So I'll draw on paper. I'll show it to you in a moment. So when I say X equals one, oops, let me just type the right place. X equals 100. What's going on behind the scenes? Basically, behind the scenes, here we go. It looks like this. We can imagine that there's like an object that contains 100 in it. That's our integer, our number object. And Python is saying now that X refers to it. So far, so good. When I say now X equals, oops, let's type here again. X equals 200, what's happening? Well, Python creates a new object that has 200 in it. And then it says, now I want X to refer to that. So every single time you use assignment in Python, it's saying break your connection with what you referred to earlier. And now, oh, there is a way to draw on a whiteboard. Good to know. And there is, I'll learn that for next time. Basically, it's breaking the connection with what you're referring to now and point to something new. Now that raises a question, which is, let's say I do this 1,000 times, right? So X is now equal to something new and something new and something new. What's happening to all the memory from this thing? Right? Like, is that going to cause any sort of memory trouble? In fact, this is known in the programming world as a memory leak. And a memory leak is a really bad thing to have in a program because it means that over time, little by little, the computer is going to run out of memory. You don't want that to happen. Now, in a language like C, you basically need to say, release this memory. I use this memory, release this memory. C programmers think this is the best thing ever because like they have ultimate control over the computer and the memory. And I'm like, you are out of your minds. Luckily, for about, 50 years, 60 years, there's been a better way to deal with this that nowadays is considered pretty standard. And that's something known as garbage collection. And garbage collection basically says when there are no references to a value, upside down, that's why. When there are no references anymore to a value, then the system can automatically release its memory. So the garbage collector is always working in Python behind the scenes saying, hey, no one's referring to this object. Great, I'm going to release its memory. And other programming languages nowadays, like Java and C# also use garbage collection. And so it's really like only the really, really low-level programming languages like C that force you to worry about this nowadays. So if it's a longer program, then all the times X appears at first, we'll have the first value, and then from the line, yes. So if I say here, like print X and print X, and print X and print X. So if I now say X equals 100, I say X equals 200. So what's going to happen? Each and every time we say print X, Python is saying, let's look this up. What is it referring to? Let's look this up. What is it referring to? And each and every time we'll say, okay, I'm referring to 100, referring to 100, referring to 200, referring to 200. In fact, let me show this to you. There's this fantastic website called the Python Tutor. So you could have a value to program and not use it. Yeah, you can have a value. I mean, yeah, I guess in theory. Hopefully Python Tutor will load up quickly. Sometimes a little slow. Okay, visualize your code. The Python Tutor is fantastic. You'll see why in a moment, but it gets even better when we get into complex data structures. It'll really like visualize all sorts of stuff super, super beautifully. Okay, so watch what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna visualize the execution. Okay, so we're gonna run this program line by line. X equals 100. Here you go. We have the global variable X and its value is 100. And now we say print X. So it's gonna look up X. X is 100. There we go, prints 100. Now we, once again, print X, prints 100. But then we're changing the value of X. Now it's 200. And now when it looks up X, it'll find it's 200 and print it out. Look it up, print it out. And so the value of a variable at the point in time that we're referring to it, that we're looking it up, Yeah. So I'll tell you, 3.6 doesn't matter. The Python tutor only goes up to 3.6, and for our purposes, it's like it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. The professor who runs the Python tutor is this amazing guy, Philip Guo, who, like, how he does this as well as be a professor, as well as do all those other things, I don't know. But every so often I've been frustrated by it, but like it's a really small thing. So the idea is basically keeping track of what your variable is referring to at any given point. Now, let me show you, I think we have enough time for like one or two last things. So let's say I do this. Let's say I say here, x equals input, enter a number. And then y equals input, enter, say one number, then a second number. And then I'm going to say print x plus y. So I'm going to say, so enter one number. I'm going to say 5. Second number, 7. And we're going to now get the addition of 5 of x plus y, which is going to be 57. So close, so close. What's going on here? It turns out that the input function always returns a string. And a string can contain any characters you want, including, as we saw before, numerals, right? It can include digits. As far as Python is concerned, when we ran the input function, we returned a string, and it stuck a string into x. And then we run the input function here, it returns a string to y. It has no way of knowing, it doesn't care that our intention was to have digits in there and that we want to add them numerically. So it did, right? Again, computers will do what you tell them to do. It took x, the string, and y, the string. It does what it always does with strings and adding them together, added it here, and printed it out. Done deal. We will see later in the course how we can change data from one type to another, how we can take strings and turn them into integers, and integers and turn them into strings. And that's actually really important. And again, some languages will automatically do this for you. They'll do what's known as casting, where they change one type to another. But Python adamantly refuses to do that, with some very small exceptions, like integers and floating point numbers, to make sure that everything is going to work. And the idea in Python in many ways is to sort of better to give you an error message and sort of die prematurely, as it were, rather than continue with a program making an assumption that's terrible, and then you discover it later on because your assumptions as the programmer and the program's assumptions were not the same. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to give you guys, those of you who have Jupyter around or Python around, I'm going to give you a short exercise, hopefully short. By the way, when I say that, and I always say that, and I always have to apologize, these things take time to internalize, and even doing something that's relatively short can be frustrating first because of the mechanics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a small exercise now. I'll give you 2-3 minutes to work on it. If you don't finish, that's okay, right? And then I'll show you how to do it, and then we'll probably finish up unless there are any more questions. And then I'll add, in the forum, probably tomorrow night or Sunday, I'll add some questions for you to try based on what we've done here. All right, so what I want you to do is, right, so the exercise is ask the user for their name and ask the user for their, I don't know, let's say country, right? And then print a greeting mentioning both. So for example, what I'd like to see in the end is it'll say something like, enter your name, and I'll type Ruben. I'll say enter your country, and I'll say Israel, and it'll say, hello, Ruben from Israel. Now, a little hint here for this last part. You can, here I'm going to just show you. We've already seen that you can say A plus B, and that'll give me AB. You can also say A plus B plus C plus D. You can have as many strings as you want, just as long as there are pluses between them. Okay, so I'll give you 2-3 minutes to work on this, to try this. Those of you who can't, I totally understand. And in 2 minutes, we'll. Meanwhile, if people have questions and want to post that, I'm totally happy to answer those while others are working. Any questions? Personal problems you want to share? Good chance. I should add, by the way, that for me, the answers are not, to these exercises are not nearly as important as the process of getting them. Can you remind us? The answer is, of course, my favorite answer, yes and no. So I can do 10 minus 5, minus 5, absolutely. But can I do A minus B? No, it does not know how to do that. Oh, you don't have to submit the answer. There's nowhere to submit it. It's just for your own personal edification. I mean, but actually what we'll do is, you know what? Send me in the chat if you want. Well, I'll take 1 or 2 people's answers. Send me in the chat, like private chat. I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be private, right? Send me the private chat and I'll paste that in and so forth. Oh, if you're having difficulty downloading Jupyter, yeah, it's annoying. It's frustrating. I'll put it in the forum for the course. I'll see what I can do to help you out. But like Jupyter is sort of, it's a bit of a bear to install, unfortunately. I mean, in theory, you don't need it. I think someone asked before about using like idle, and which is the editor that comes with Python. I must say, my experience with idle is terrible. I think it's just like really hard to use. But I've encountered other instructors who love using it because it's simple, because people can take to it pretty easily. Oh, can't see the quiz anymore. Sorry. I'll put this in the chat actually. Now that I know how to use the chat. Okay. Oh, okay. So, all right. So I'm gonna take Yaroslav's answer here, and then I will take Rob's answer. Oh, I see that they're great at new lines in the Zoom world. Fantastic. Okay. So here we have name equals input of your name, country is input, what do you cover? And you can see that basically both times we're running input, giving it different arguments, the strings there, goes into name. Input goes into country. And then we have 2 variables, name and country, both of which contain strings. And then we can print this whole thing out. Hello, name, from, country, exclamation point, red dot. And I run this, I say Reuven from Israel. Fantastic. This is great. Now, is it super annoying to have these plus signs between things? It indeed is. And so Rob here decided to do something a little more sophisticated, which I have not taught you yet, but I will be super nice and show it to you right now. So enter your country, so far so good, basically the same. And then what he did was he used a special kind of string that's actually new to Python. It's relatively new. It's what we call an F string. Why is it called an F string? Because it starts with F. Very clever, these programmers and their naming of things. So basically we have the string here before the opening quotes, either single quote or double quote, will be an F. And the magic thing that happens is inside of the string, you can put curly braces and the name of the variable you want. And this do exactly the same thing, just this is way easier to use. So I love F strings. They actually started in Python 3.6. So it's like 2 or 3 years ago. And now, like, I mean, I can't imagine not using that. It's really like super, super fantastic. All right, so here we can like do this, Reuven from Israel again, and yeah, there we go. Phew. Okay, any other questions? I think we're gonna finish up in just a few moments. I know you might be saying, wow, we didn't do a lot, but we actually did, right? We saw how variables work. We saw how assigning them works. We saw we can get input from the user and produce output for the user. I mean, hey, what's a computer if not getting input and output? So the plan is basically, I'm gonna put like 2 or 3, again, simple exercises in the forum. If people have problems with installation, you can talk about it there. If people have questions in general, you can talk about it there. And the plan is to meet again next week. And what we're going to do next week is we're going to see how we can make decisions in our program, how we can say if something is true or not. And that's going to actually take up most of the time that we'll need next time. Because basically making decisions is important. And also the syntax of Python so far has been very straightforward. But we're going to discover all sorts of like, wild, crazy, interesting syntax things. Other questions, other thoughts, comments before we finish up for this time? All right, folks. Thank you so much. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues. Just don't tell people you don't like. Stay safe and have a great weekend. And I'll see you next week and in the forum. Bye, everyone. I'll mute this.